It's not actually for everybody. Some people can't sleep properly with that debt, but I actually see the debt as buying me time sometimes when I need to, and paying the mortgage insurance to have the security of the money that allows me to control the decisions before the bank does.
Yeah. Welcome to the Get Invested podcast, where we share conversations I've enjoyed with experts from all walks of life to uncover their secret know-how on where they invest their time, their skills and their money, and the benefits this has created. Get Invested helps you to live more, work less and leave a legacy by investing now. Listen to the show to discover top tips on how to get started, to make the most of your investment journey and ultimately to be living the dream. More episodes can be found on iTunes or at khgroup.com.au/Get Invested. Thanks for listening, and let's get invested. Welcome back to Get Invested. I want to start today by asking you a question. How important is loyalty to you? You see, in this day and age, I find it's a very rare quality. But what is loyalty? Well, for me, it is staying true and firm to something over the long haul. It is standing by the people and the things that you love, even in the darkest times. It's about being dedicated to something indefinitely. And loyalty, along with dedication, patience, persistence, and acceptance, have proven to be essential qualities for anyone who's achieved sustainable success. And this is why Brad Beer, the CEO of BMT Tax Depreciation, is our guest on this episode. Brad's a very humble, understated and immediately likeable gentle giant who has achieved great things in both his career and his personal property investment journey. Brad started his career with BMT over 20 years ago as the very first employee, and he's grown BMT into Australia's leading tax depreciation business as the CEO with hundreds of employees nationally. And his long-term dedicated approach to his career is mirrored in his property investment success, where he has accumulated a strong buy, build and hold portfolio over the years. During our conversation, you'll learn the best way to achieve success in property and your career, and you'll come to understand the massive impact that tax depreciation can have on reducing the ongoing cost and the cash flow affordability of property to make it sustainable. Because I know that if you secure the right type of property and you optimise depreciation, you can make property affordability sustainable long term without restricting or impinging on your lifestyle. Brad's a living testimony to the impact that long-term loyalty and what I call stick-to-itiveness has on helping others succeed so that you can succeed. I know you're going to get a lot out of this great conversation with Brad Beer. Hi Brad, it's great to get you on Get Invested, and looking forward to really digging in deep, mate. For the benefit of the listening audience who may not have heard of you or BMT, and most of them will have, but can you give us a rundown on who you are and what you do, please, mate?
Yeah, sure, Bushy. Bradley Beer, great to be here, by the way. Bradley Beer, I am the CEO and run and own part of a business called BMT Tax Depreciation. That has been, from a work perspective, nearly the last 20 years of my life. But before that, I grew up in a little country town in Taree. I'm 42. I've got wife Sarah of about 13 years. I've got 3 little kids that are 6 weeks, 2 and 3 years old. So I'm in the thick of that part of life, which I'm enjoying and absolutely loving.
Yeah, I bet. Good on you, mate. Awesome.
But it is a tough one part. I went to school in my country town. Started a uni degree in economics. Didn't like it too much. I went back and worked in a furniture shop for a little while and surfed every day. It was fantastic, except it hurt my back a fair bit.
So you don't surf anymore, mate?
7, so it wasn't the type of job for me. I then decided that I need to go back and use my brain because I wasn't too bad at school, even though I didn't work that hard. Went in and did a building or construction management degree, which I come out as a quantity surveyor. And I actually started at BMT halfway through second year of a 4-year degree with one of my who became one of my partners and the founders of BMT. were lecturing part-time because it had just started. And so I got some work experience at BMT, which I needed for my degree. And after that, I decided that I liked it, and I was going to get work experience that allowed me to set something up in the type of things I could do. And look, here I am 20 years later. I was the first staff member.
Yep.
There's about 200 of us now, and I'm a shareholder and have been since 2002.
Yep.
And the CEO and run the show with a fantastic team.
Brilliant, mate.
Effectively. Outside of work, I love anything that relates to a boat, pretty much, and putting one in the water. Love to do it with the kids. I've fished over time, spent a lot of time surfing, not so much with kids now. Spent a lot of time snowboarding, not so much with kids now. Some of those things change, but when they're old enough, they'll come back again. At the moment, a lot of the boating's with the kids and have some fun on the way.
Brilliant, mate. That's a fantastic overview. So before I sort of drill back into some of that history, why do you do what you do, mate?
Look, why do I do what I do? I guess I didn't go. I went and did a construction management degree, thinking I've got an interest in building. I didn't watch much TV and play games as a kid. There wasn't quite so many computer games around when I was a kid.
You and me both.
Let alone a mobile phone. And I spent my time in the shed with my dad and my grandpa building stuff, fixing stuff, and we did some little renovations on our house, which I enjoyed. And I think I probably just had an interest in building, started a building degree, and I fell in through work experience, as I said, to not the current role, but the current business in a very different role. Yeah. It means I've done pretty much everyone's role around here because there was only such a small number of us. And I liked it. I liked the challenge. I like doing things properly. I'm here because I love to be here still. My partners sold out of the business a couple of years ago, 3 years ago. Yep. The original partners. I've got new partners and I've got existing staff that are partners. And I had no interest in selling, and I was maybe a smaller shareholder. So that was part of the reason. And I was embedded in the business and running the business then. And why do I do what I do? I love doing the job that I have. I don't love everything about it every day. Airports aren't my favourite place. But I continue to do it because I see more challenges and look, I like to make the money, but I don't think money – I definitely think that money is – not the big driver for me, even though I don't want to do it for nothing.
Sure, yeah. What is the driver, mate? Then what is the driver for you? Look,
challenge to continue to drive this business in the future, make some impact on the people's lives. I employ a couple hundred people, and I've had a lot of them for 10, 15 years.
Wow.
And it's been that's been a great journey. I've got a couple of new arms to this business that they're getting underway. So we're back in sort of earlier startup and bought another business that's at an earlier stage they're new challenges for me. But I still, I love the people. Yep. I have lots of 10, 15 plus year relationships with a lot of clients and I guess referrers in the accounting industry that we deal with. Yeah. And, I have friends that I've worked, business people that turned into friends throughout Australia.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you're a very likeable bloke, mate.
I still feel a chance to come to work and make it come together.
Yeah, no, awesome, mate. Something that I can sort of take out of what I'm hearing from you, mate, and correct me if I'm wrong on this, but clearly a long-term view is important to you. The depth of relationships are important. And there's clearly a loyalty factor there that relates to pretty much everything I see you doing, mate. Is that, am I right in reading that? And if so, where do those sort of values come from and why are they important to you, mate?
Look, I guess they come from the things either that are instilled in you from when you're very young. I grew up with a strong, close family with my parents are together. I'm one of 4 kids. I spent a lot of time with my grandparents and my family. I guess some of those people, obviously, that impacted on my life and others that have since had those things around relationship. I'm a quantity surveyor, which is someone who measures buildings, but I'm probably not the personality to be one of those. I don't do a lot of measuring of buildings.
Yeah, no, I understood. Yeah. But you certainly...
I think
Go on, mate, sorry.
I've always been a person who, I love to do things right, and I love to do things with integrity. And I think one of the big things about our business is that, we probably hold half the market share in the country in what we do. We've grown a very good business in our space.
Massive.
And I've applied very simple fundamentals of integrity, loyalty, relationships. I just have relationships with people, and we're the guys that do the stuff, and we produce good service, make sure we don't muck anybody around, and we put systems in to try. In saying that, we're humans, but
of course
we produce something for people. And I think just any other job I've had, but there's not many before this one, even in my job at the furniture shop, they'd want me to come back and work on holidays all the time because, they want someone that actually had some initiative and tried to do the job properly, even though I didn't love that job that much.
Yeah.
I get frustrated with people that mow my lawn because they don't do it properly. Taught to do it properly. People that do trade jobs on my houses these days. And funnily enough, I actually bought my grandparents' house a number of years ago.
Okay.
Before my grandmother passed away, and I don't know if that's a little bit nostalgic. I love the fact that I own it. I didn't want to touch it, but it's probably got some opportunity. I haven't done anything with it, but I bought it a while ago. And what I guess an example of doing things properly and comes there from my grandfather, where I get a little frustrated sometimes with painting done on houses that I've had done 10 years ago that I'm having to look to redo.
Right.
But the paint that my grandfather made me do properly on the windows of that house that I probably did 35 years ago has only just been repainted recently.
Wow.
Because you prep it properly and do the job properly. And I guess those things were put into my life from an early stage. Yeah,
no, that's awesome, mate. There's certainly traits that are, unfortunately, not as strong because a lot of us tend to live in this instant iPhone everything world, and the sort of long-term approach of doing a job and doing it well once and then lasting the duration few and far between, unfortunately. But mate,
sometimes painting you pay for what you get.
Yeah, true. Yes.
Yes. Or a perfect example, but the concept, if you get it.
I do. Yeah, and it's a good example because I often say with our own investment properties, but when I see some of the painters that come through, 3 coats means 1, 2, 3 dabs with a brush, and it's there's that sort of get out exercise I see too much, unfortunately. But mate, just coming back to your foray into the very early days of BMT, you mentioned your lecturers were the founding starters. They obviously saw something in you as a student to get you on board early. What was that, do you think?
That was probably a part of that was probably lucky that there was a small group of people. I did some work with one of the founding directors' brothers through university, and the founding partners, and they were interested in anyone who wanted some work experience that I guess wasn't had their head screwed on enough. Because I'd had a couple of years off and worked, I was ready to go and have a go at these things. I didn't go to uni to party, I suppose.
Yes.
And that is not that I went to I worked a lot harder at uni at the start of this degree because you've gone back and you've thrown in the income from, not that it was a massive paying job, and you got to go back to the breadline because I had no backing.
Yeah, exactly.
And I think I'd gone back to have a go at that. Now, my marks towards the end of uni slowly went down because I concentrated my time on BMT instead.
Yeah.
But I think that was a good decision.
Good decision. Clearly, an awesome decision.
And I think it wasn't that they gave me a go to start so much. It was more the fact that I treated it like it was mine from the start.
Right.
And treated a depreciation schedule for a client as if it was my property. And we talk about that still in this organisation.
Yeah.
You do a lot, people that go and do a lot of depreciation schedules all day.
Yeah.
If it was your depreciation schedule for your property, you'd want the job done properly, get the maximum deductions, and you've got to think of everyone as if it's yours.
Yes.
And I thought about this business like it was mine, and then they decided that they'd like someone to think like that about the business into the future.
Yeah, brilliant, mate. No, awesome ride for you to sort of grow, and the personal satisfaction you must get out of building an organisation like you have and offering a service like you do. You must leave you with a big smile on your face, mate.
I think that I'm very proud of that. I'm very proud of the business that I'll say that we've built, because the team in management that are now my partners have been with me for 15 and 17 years.
Awesome.
And some of the staff have been with me that time. So
that's terrific.
They've put good people around them. I had my original partners. This business, I didn't start this business, and a lot of people think I'm the B in BMT. I'm actually not. But the fact that they had the idea, started it, tried to put good people around them, and build it to the business with me that it is today, is a fantastic result by a team of people that got in and did it together. Yeah,
well, obviously one of your other skills is to attract good people, mate, because, I know, having run our own business, finding and keeping good people is always a challenge, and people are very dynamic, and if you've been able to build and maintain a team that have been with you for that long, then that's testimony to your leadership skills, mate. So take my hat off to you in that regard, mate.
I think there's some natural things around that with me sometimes, but on top of that, they're not all 15-year people, but because we've grown over time. But the core requirements of things like integrity and doing it right, you've got to fit with the company's culture and values that exist there, and if you don't, then we've got to have a different discussion. Yeah. We've got to put the people that do fit together.
Yeah, no, that's brilliant, mate. Brilliant. Mate, let's drill into the depreciation topic a bit, given that's obviously your area of expertise, and it's an area that I have a big interest in, both personally as a property investor, but for the clients that we're helping along that journey, because it's fair to say that the very early days of my investment experience, I used to get my accountant to do depreciation because I didn't really know much about it, and they did an okay job, and through my learnings and rubbing shoulders with other investors, came across BMT, and this is it was 20 years ago, in the very early days, and really opened my eyes to the benefits that a well done depreciation report can do to keeping your hard-earned money in your pocket, but also significantly contributing to the ongoing affordability of a property when it's combined with a PAYG withholding tax variation. And it's that affordability piece that a lot of investors don't think about enough. They think about how much they can borrow, they think about what equity they've got to buy the property, but they then don't put a lot of science into how am I going to afford this thing long term while I continue to live and grow a family and do the rest of it? So can you share with us some of the key benefits that you see day to day for investors both buying existing and or building properties that depreciation is going to do to help them in that regard?
Look, Bushy, in the time that I've been in BMT, if I looked at some of the reasons for growing, that we've grown the business, there's a few of them. But one of the key things is I'd say that we're actually almost an educator.
Yep.
We spend a lot of time educating people about depreciation, what it is, this is what it means to an investor. And yeah, I'm the guy that does it at the end of that, but that's not the main thing. The fact is there's deductions there in properties that people aren't taking advantage of properly. Yep. The rules are there. They're set as a fundamental thing.
Yep.
But it's just was never understood or done very well. Now it's understood better as time goes on. And simply, if you buy an investment property, you're buying some bricks and mortar, and you're buying some things in there. And depreciation is a simple concept that applies to lots of things you use for business.
Yeah.
They wear out over time, just like a car wears out over time, and you get some deductions. for the fact that your car wears out. If you use it for business, you claim that deduction or wear and tear.
Yep.
On a property, we want it to appreciate in value, but the items in there and the bricks and mortar depreciate in value, and the tax office allows us to claim for that.
Yep.
Now, I still all the time see people that say, I've got a good accountant, my accountant looks after that. Now, most of the jobs we do come referred by an accountant.
Yep.
We don't fight with the accountants. They're our friends.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
We provide a couple of numbers that they put into your tax return to make sure that's done properly, legitimately, but we're a specialist in depreciation. So we firstly estimate the construction cost as the quantity surveyor.
Yep.
So that it will stack if you get an audit. But on top of that, we go and try to make them as much as we can under the rules that exist.
Yes.
Learning how to do that properly was a very important part of our business, obviously, and make sure that investors take advantage properly of the deductions. And I think when buying property, one thing I'll always say is that, depreciation and tax reasons aren't the only reason to buy a particular property. There's a whole bunch of things that help create wealth out of that property.
Yes.
Depreciation is one of those things that's part of the cash flow that needs to be considered properly, and you've got to crunch these numbers before you buy it.
Yes. Yeah, no, and that's a really good point is crunching numbers before you buy the property, because, and you would have seen them as well, the number of people that come to us after they bought the property and say, okay, Bushy, what do I do now? Still, I get staggered by that approach, whereas the property is the last thing that people do if they come through a properly structured process. And crunching the numbers, incorporating every cost in buying, building or holding a property, and then incorporating the impact of depreciation and other measures into the exercise to come down to this is the real cost of this property on a per week basis before you even start, is something that unfortunately not enough investors do. And the education that you're providing through what you do in that regard, I think, is going a long way to changing that. But mate, because I know in my own case, just sort of revisiting the early days, when we changed accountants at one stage to someone who was fully supportive of depreciation schedules. And in those days, you could actually retrospectively go back 4 years to re-look at your previous returns. And given where we're at that particular time, we end up with an extra 20 grand back in the back pocket as a direct result of that.
Happy days.
It was massive. It was a real eye opener for us, mate. And I guess the ongoing transition that we've been through, because every investor learns along the path. And in the early days, we were buying older properties and renovating them and creating some equity, and then using that to go forward. What we've done on the last half of our portfolio is focus more on the build piece because of the stamp duty savings, but also the depreciation benefits on new, particularly now since the budget last year, pretty substantial in terms of reducing that effective holding cost. And when we combine that with tenants in common provisions and slanting it that way with the other things we've talked about, depreciation, as I say, can have a massive impact on that affordability piece ongoing. Mate, can you talk to us about, because I've sort of noticed in discussions in recent times that with the perceived change to depreciation and negative gearing, whatnot, last year's budget, there's a number of accountants and property managers who are now, for some reason, thinking, oh, well, there's not much point getting a depreciation schedule anymore. I'd absolutely disagree with that view. Can you add some colour to that discussion, mate?
Look, absolutely, and I'm with you, Bushy. I absolutely disagree with it. Now, in saying that, the simple first questions you consider on whether or not you should get a depreciation schedule are the same as they were before these changes.
Yeah.
What it means after these changes is that some people, I have to say, look, there's not enough deductions in that to be worth doing it.
Yep.
But don't not ask the question because you think you've heard something, I suppose. And
yes.
And without too much detail, what they've done is they've said that when you buy a property that's previously used, you can't claim a deduction against what's called the plant and equipment anymore if it's second hand.
Yep.
And that's things like the carpets, the stoves and hot water services.
Yeah.
there's this other part of depreciation or claims on properties that relates to the building allowance, which is the concrete walls, the floors and the roof, which makes up about 85% or so of the claim over the life of the property that's still available. So it's not all gone and done.
Exactly. Yeah. Good point.
There is some age restrictions on that claim, and that claim relates to the original structure of the building. It relates to some renovations on the building. But don't worry about all of those things. Just realise there's some changes. Let's ask the specialist the question, because we are never going to do a depreciation schedule for someone if they're not going to get some money out of it. And with a few questions, we can identify whether that's the case. So it's very simple for us to do that. And I think the other thing to consider is that there are some things that aren't affected, and that's commercial property, that's brand new property, as you say. And what that's done is, so commercial property, brand new property, substantially renovated property, or if you buy a property and then add things yourself, you can still depreciate those because they're new things. And what it has meant is that, yes, over the life of the property, 85% of the deductions are still there, but there's a few of those deductions in the earlier years where if you do buy it new, those deductions are higher. Because you are getting to take advantage of the deductions on that plant equipment. And there's deductions that are quite substantial in the early years on those carpets and things because you claim them quicker. So there's more deductions, especially in the early years on new properties. But look, the key thing is that I've heard it from accountants going, it's all over, isn't it? And then I've heard it from the property managers. And I think the real estate industry, I've got a re-education process there because they used to ask the question, maybe get some money. They've heard there's changes. They're not sure. So we've got to remind them like this that what it comes down to is that you ask the same questions as a property manager of your investor as you did before. Depreciation is there. Yes, there's been some changes. There might be some money there, and 70-80% of the people aren't maximising this deduction properly. So we should ask some questions for you and see if there's some deductions left in this property or deductions claimable against this property that you can get. And look, all these things only apply to people who bought after budget night in May last year anyway. So there's a lot of people there who haven't done it.
Exactly.
And there's the potential, as you did, to go back and amend easily for a couple of years your tax returns. And see if you can get some of that money back from the tax office.
Yeah, no, brilliantly said. And I think the only thing that's probably polarised to some degree, but particularly where for those savvy investors who do look closely at the holding cost exercise, particularly in the early years, Brad, because I guess we see a lot of first-time investors in particular. They're in the younger phase of their family growth, so that first 10 years is pretty important in the context of that affordability piece. And I guess
where there is, sorry. But there is a bit of difference made there, but it's very easy. We've got, calculators, or we can talk about the property about what these numbers might be before you buy to help you to crunch those numbers.
Yeah, and then that's exactly the point I was going to reinforce with you there, mate. And I guess the only slight tweaking that I guess we've seen proactively looking at the impact if affordability is a key driver, and as you say, depreciation and tax deductions aren't the reason why you invest in property, but if you're buying the right property in the right place with the right growth that's going to give you the right outcome, then as a secondary layer to that, taking advantage and optimising your depreciation can certainly smooth the cash flow exercise to make it affordable and not impact too much on lifestyle while you're making that sacrifice. I guess the slight tweaks that we're seeing are, as you've well pointed out, just buying an old property and then popping tenants in it, the holding cost is going to be high, particularly in those early years, versus buying something perhaps below market where you go in and renovate and you start the clock again on some of those essential plant and equipment items to reduce that holding cost, or building a property in the right location that means that you're taking advantage of the growth that might be happening in that area, but still making it a very affordable cash flow piece as a result of that. Is that something you're seeing in the reports that you're doing for investors these days, mate?
Look, yes, and you've hit a lot of the key points in it. It's about the place you do that you build and where it is you do what you do, and there's no use doing all that if you can't afford to hold it, right?
Yes, yeah, exactly. Spot on.
So the cash flow of which depreciation impacts on after tax is a key piece of that puzzle in that whole puzzle of actually making this happen. We're seeing a lot of the depreciation schedules we're still doing, or that we're doing at the moment, are actually a lot of people take about 10 months on median to buy a depreciation schedule from me after they've settled the property.
Yeah, right.
And what we've got at the moment is people that are preparing for their tax return, and we'll get more of them, and we're getting them over time. A lot of people have probably bought last year and aren't necessarily as impacted because they maybe bought before this budget came out.
Right.
So a lot of the schedules we're doing are still from the past.
Yeah, okay.
Next year we'll start seeing the result of what they're doing otherwise. But I think people, I think the message that new property is unaffected has definitely got out there a little bit.
Good.
And that, if you're lining up and doing your number crunching properly, then you'll see that there's, in the early years when that affordability is a bit tough, more deductions available there, Bushy.
Yeah, and spot on. And the simple example that we use when we're sort of opening people's eyes to the impact that depreciation can have is that, let's say on an average $400,000 dollar property, new build in a good area with a couple on, good average combined household income around the sort of 120 to 150 mark, there's often a healthy tax credit of about 10 grand in the first few years, and that obviously reduces over time as the items are written off. But if you equate that and then you add that to a tax variation and then you slant that using tenants in common provisions, that equates to a couple of $100 a week in terms of the affordability piece that the depreciation has effectively helped to create. So it's a sleeping giant, I think, in the context of those that are just blundering in buying a property and not thinking about depreciation. By weaving that into the mix, it can really have a substantial and almost life-saving and life-changing impact on both the lifestyle and the cost of that property as you move forward.
Absolutely. The average deduction out of a property in depreciation, and this is not the newer ones, this was the whole of last financial year. Yeah. In the first year that we did the schedule full year was about $10,000.
Yeah.
So, after they play with their tax rate, etc., your example there of a couple $100 a week for the family makes a big difference to the cash flow on the way through.
Massive difference. And I want
to stop living at the tax office.
Yeah, we work hard enough for it, and that's exactly the point. I mean, people grapple for tax deductions anyway to try and look at it, and if you've got the ability to be securing a property, and if you're doing it in the right way in the right place, that over a 10, 15, 20-year period is going to significantly increase in value, and you can use the tax credits to either that flow through from depreciation to either help you pay down the home loan or to supplement your living expenses. Then I'm hoping it's going to break down that horrible statistic I keep hearing about, the fact that 50% of first-time investors sell a property within 5 years of securing the damn thing. So it's just, and I know a lot of that's to do with the fact that they just don't structure it properly, and they blunder in because someone's told them it's a good idea at the barbecue, and then they race out and buy a home that they would live in close to where they live, and then wonder why it doesn't stack up after that. Whereas if we take a more proactive approach,
might not have the key drivers for property growth.
Yeah. Well, you're absolutely right there, mate. So, look, I could talk ad nauseum about to you about the benefits of depreciation. I just want to, reinforce your point that even though there's been some minor tweaks to it as of the budget last year, there's still a very significant benefit in making sure you get a good depreciation schedule. It will significantly change the whole holding cost scenario for property. So absolutely, it'll be I say to people, mate, it's the best few $100 they're going to spend, and it's tax deductible anyway to get a depreciation schedule. So ask the question and take advantage of it, mate. But look, I'd like to pivot now into your personal investment journey, if I can, and just get you to walk me through in generic terms, without getting too specific, about what was the first investment that you made. What did you learn from that? And then sort of walk us through your progression in terms of what changed over your personal investment journey, and then we'll reflect on, given what you know now, what you may have done differently when you started off. Can you sort of walk us through that?
Yeah, I'll walk you through a bit of the journey, absolutely. And I think, firstly, I started BMT in '97, so I started learning about I learned how to do depreciation schedules, and then I also, as part of that, had to learn what they were for. When I come to get my work experience in BMT, I didn't really know what a depreciation schedule was, because I was just studying a building degree, and I thought I was going to help manage and hammer nails.
Yeah, of course.
I learned what a quantity surveyor was, and became one through that. And I think what that meant is I started listening, and I used to go to a lot of, and one benefit I've had through the whole time at BMT is I've, done a lot of education on depreciation.
Yeah.
And where do you do that? In front of investors, with other people, teach them how to invest in property.
Yes.
I got the benefit of going to more seminars probably than anybody, and I didn't have to pay for them all, except I had to give my time to my piece of it.
Perfect.
And taking and learning from that was fantastic. But the first investment I bought was a little 4-bedroom house, and I'd been saving and getting to this point, and it was in 2002.
Yeah.
Saving for some time. I knew I wanted to invest in property. I've been learning about investing in property, and look, I really probably have to go back to my original partners in the business that we'd been talking about it, and my partners had started investing in property, and actually that's the same year they became my partners. Before that, they were my bosses.
Yeah, right. Okay.
And I was on the journey with them though, because I treated it like mine, right?
Yeah, of course.
But they actually said, I think we found one for you, Brad. And we've negotiated a price for you, basically.
They've done the job for you.
Down. So I went around and bought it. Obviously, I had a look, and we probably didn't crunch the sort of numbers that I understand now. But look, it's a little 4-bedroom house in a suburb called Georgetown, which is one in Newcastle.
Okay.
And I paid $170,000 for it.
Awesome. What's it worth now, mate?
I think the last valuation I had done on it was about 575 or 600,000. I did some renovations on it then. I've done some more minor renovations on it since.
Yep.
And it's rented very well. It's had good cash flow for that whole period of time, basically.
Yep.
And it's been a great little property.
Yeah,
really.
Brilliant. No, that's awesome.
It started there, and then the second one happened only. So I paid $170,000 for it. I did some work inside it and renovated it. I went back to the mortgage broker and asked about some more money.
Yep.
And they did a drive-by valuation.
Yep.
About 5 months later at $240,000.
Yeah, nice.
Gave me some instant equity quickly. And the thing is, I did all the work inside, so I don't know how to do those valuations.
Yeah,
but
interesting.
Anyway. So, the market had moved a bit around that time in those spaces. So I bought another little place in another suburb, Mayfield, for $220,000.
Yep.
I'd done another renovation on that only last year, and it came in with a val of $600, rents for about $600 a week.
Nice.
I then sort of got on I then made a couple of mistakes and bought a block of land, which I still own.
Okay.
Inexpensive one, doesn't stop me investing, but probably slowed me down a little bit.
Yep.
And after that, this basic buy, renovate, revalue, get my equity back out, rent it out. I went on a fair journey of doing a lot of those.
Okay.
I've done a number of those over time, and then I moved into buying things that I had some potential to develop. I've done some small developments. When I say that, build the house on the back, split the blocks. I've built a couple of those. I've got a couple more to build that I've had for some time. With a partner, I did build a block of 12 units together. It's was actually with one of my BMT partners, which we built and held. I bought a little block of units. Most of my staff has been houses and things, and I've picked up a few little bits and other pieces on the way. I only own one commercial property. Is
that the one that your business is in, or is it separate?
That's a fair bit of the journey.
No, that's awesome, mate. And if we reflect now on what you now know versus what you knew then, would you have done anything differently when you started out?
Look, I think firstly, a lot of my property holdings are in New South Wales, because I was buying and renovating, and I needed to be around. Didn't need to be, but I was around them so I could do them at a cost that I could sustain, I suppose. That's created a fair land tax problem for me.
Yes, good call.
The diversification issue out of the one state. Now I see land tax in two ways. One, that probably annoys me when I get my bills. Two, when I have to. I knew it was there. When you look at properties, it's one of the numbers you've got to factor in. What it means is that the first-time investor can make something stack in the same area as me without as much cost to hold.
Good call.
So could I have diversified? Couldn't have grown the equity I did by probably quite as easy, because I needed to renovate and do things, because I started with, I started in that first property with the savings from my job in a short period of time that I saved pretty hard, and I had no equity, no backing, no help other than someone saying there's a good one to buy. I think my first mortgage came with a letter from my parents saying they were going to give me some money, which they didn't.
Well, let's talk about that, because one of the things I often talk to our investors is that a lot of first-time investors come to me and say, I'm not interested in mortgage insurance. That's just a cost I don't want to wear. But when I show them that, and if you've got the right accountant, mortgage insurance is tax deductible if the purpose is for investment. And if I can demonstrate to them they could leverage into two properties rather than one, and then you apply the same growth, you end up with double the result over the long term. How did that fit in your model?
If you ask me, one of the biggest things I would change especially in the early days. There's lots of things you change because you've got hindsight now.
Of course.
And I'd say, well, I wouldn't have bought in that area because it didn't grow as well as that area. That's easy that's easy because I've got hindsight. But the one that you can change if you are investing now, that is probably one of the biggest takeouts to me, is that what I did was I actually saved my 20%. And why I needed the letter was I didn't really have enough money to stamp duty and had to save that to settlement, or I'd have to, knock on mum and dad's door. But I it would have been tough. I would have been pulling it together. But what it meant is that what it could have meant for me is that, because some of the things that you do learn about cash and how bad mortgage insurance could be and things like that, I just got to saved up my deposit. And what it meant was it took me longer to do that, and I should have actually got into the market earlier and paid mortgage insurance. I learnt that by about the second or third, because I started running out of equity again. And since then, I always would buy, renovate, revalue, and push them up to high LVRs and pay the mortgage insurance, because it meant I could get all my cash back out for the next deposit and renovation.
And brilliant. That's a good recognition.
So that's probably one of the biggest learning. Controlling finance and understanding it is up there at the top level of importance in investing in a property portfolio. Obviously you got to find the right property, but and those sorts of things, but it comes down to finance and not being scared of it. I've got a lot of debt, but I've also got a lot of debt that's not in use, meaning I've got flexibility to do things now that I never did in the past.
It's brilliant. The reason, a big reason that when I transitioned out of being an architect to moving into this arena was the recognition from my own portfolio perspective that if I couldn't get my hands on the money, I couldn't expand the portfolio. And what I have learned over the time, that property is a game of finance. If the strategy and the structure around access to finance means that I can accumulate a bigger portfolio earlier to allow time and capital growth to do its work, then it's a much easier ride by taking advantage of that. And as I often joke that my old man, who taught me a fair bit about the property game because he was active in it until he passed away, he used to say, look, it's the bank's money, let them worry about it. What's the worst thing that can happen?
It's more of their problem it is.
Yeah, that's right. And what's the worst thing that can happen? You sell a property and you walk away with some money in your back pocket. So I agree with you that there is probably an uneducated fear of lending money. But if it's structured the right way so that from a risk perspective there isn't much risk, then if you can treat that as your friend, and it can certainly used in an effective way help you to grow your wealth, but also as you've just mentioned, create a war chest reserve of funds that you can fall back on if you need it for a rainy day. So yeah, no, really good points made there, mate. What about the other thing?
I think.
Sorry, mate, you go on.
Sorry, I think that it's not actually for everybody. Some people can't sleep properly with that debt, but I actually see the debt as buying me time sometimes when I need to, and paying the mortgage insurance to have the security of the money that allows me to control the decisions before the bank does.
Yes.
Has been a way that I've done that. But you've just got to understand how to control those risks, and finance is actually one of those ways to control the risk.
Yes. Yeah, beautiful. Music to my ears, mate. 100% agree there. Now, I've sort of noticed also in the transition through your building your portfolio that you've moved from old through the renovation phase, and it sounds like more into the building phase. And it also and I'm guessing here, but it sounds a bit like early days you were probably doing a fair bit of that work yourself, after hours, weekends with barbecues with mates and throwing on beers to get stuff done, to probably not having the time to do that now, and you get other people to do it for you. If you what were
Good
the main
observation.
Yeah, well, I say that because I went through exactly the same journey myself, mate, and learnt from that. Because now my view of investing is if you're creating a second job by doing it, then it's not really that good an investment. But that transition into the building exercise, what sort of opened your eyes to going down more of that road than buying the older properties?
Look, I still won't. To me, it's not I won't buy an older property. I still will if it comes down to all of the numbers, the areas, the whatever. But I guess when I had I think developing property and buying new properties. Well, firstly, they've got some simple things about them. Not as much stuff breaks. You don't have to renovate them.
Yes. Yeah. Good call. Yeah. Very good call.
And look, they do get good depreciation, but we've been through that. It's not the only reason for me.
No.
And rather than making my equity growth out of renovating existing properties, I mean, by building another one on a piece of land I've already got, it can be a good way to grow some equity quickly.
Yes.
Rather than renovating, just build a wholesale property.
Yep.
I've built them on the back of a house I already have. So I bought the front house that is old, renovated it, built one on the back of it. So I've got a new property and an old property, split them. They're separated as two separate properties that I rent separately. And you need to make sure, the risk in those is a little higher if something goes wrong, and you need a bit of money to cover that, or bucket money we often like to call it.
That's a good term.
Or really money that's been borrowed in case you need it. Don't use it on a car or a boat, but use it on things in order to make sure you got control of their situation. So I moved into those things because it's got a way to do that, and it's got some goods and bads with both. Sure.
I'm guessing that there's probably a fair chance that you've created some equity on completion by building it below what the new build's worth, which is if you're doing your maths and you're crunching numbers well, is often an unseen benefit of going through the build process as well. Has that been the case for you?
Yes. Look, there's so as much as you crunch your numbers on buying a property for investment, you crunch your numbers in a feasibility study before you even consider development. I also am not a full-time developer, which I think it's got its goods and bads, but one of the good things about that is I'm actually buying properties as investments that have development potential, but I'm not forced to develop them. I've got the fallback position of the existing property that's not one house I'm trying to build 50 units on, so I've paid heaps for it. I'm not forced to develop, and I'm not forced to do it quickly. I can do it in my own time.
Brilliant.
So that's been good as well.
Yeah, no, that's awesome, mate. Now you're clearly a buy and holder, or buy, build and holder, or
a bit of both.
Yeah, a bit of both. Yeah, and clearly a long-term investor. Why is that, do you think?
So I'm definitely a buy and holder. I'll say I've sold one property in my whole time because I owned it with partners, and we all didn't have the same need for it anymore. So it was the only reason for selling it.
Okay.
Now, one of the things about the investing into property, the money to me, and the wealth into the future is made through leverage and through growth. And selling the properties, you get no growth. You've only got what you make now. You pay tax on it and you move on.
Yeah, and if you take the capital gains out of it, often there's not much left.
Well, exactly. And I mean, that's a feasibility situation for you to crunch. And if you can't hold the property and selling is the only way to release the equity or borrowing capacity to do the next one, then that's something to do. Or if it's not going to perform and stops you investing in something that or you don't believe it's going to perform and it stops you investing into the next one, then you've got to consider these things for selling. But I believe that, I know from the past in Australia that we have up and down in property values, but they've grown by reasonable percentages for as long as we've been here, pretty much. Do I think we have slow times sometimes? Yes. We have better growth times sometimes, but the cost of me holding those properties for the slow times, obviously I'm aware of, is not enough that I can't control. And I know I run my spreadsheets with, how much growth do I need out of this property to cover any shortfall I might have? Anything else is I'm making money out of that into the future. And it's pretty low that I need to cover any shortfall on any properties. I've got a certain amount of my money in there, a certain amount of the bank's money in there, and the end value grows based on the bank's money, which is a simple leverage scenario.
Yeah, brilliant.
So the end wealth is much higher.
Yeah, no, fantastic, mate. And I'll sort of get into the future in a little minute, but given you've obviously had quite an involvement across a range of different investment vehicles, what's been your best or most worthwhile investment to date, and why?
I'd probably have to say that from a numbers point of view, a lot of my business, because of what it is, has probably been partly my business, and BMT is probably been one of the best investments, or the best investment individually out of all of them.
Yeah, well done. yeah, spot on.
If I it's not passive, I'll assure you.
Yet,
but it's also a lot of fun, and I like it. So I don't know that I'd still like to do a lot of renovating.
No, exactly.
Too much. I love a little bit, and then I'm happy to put the drill away. I love playing with the drills. I love going to Bunnings. But I've probably got a few standouts. There's some standouts in my portfolio that where and what they usually are is I've managed to pick up the one below sort of value by having the funds available to buy it and being finance ready, and so I can act fast all the time.
Great.
And I don't need the bank to say yes.
Yeah, brilliant.
And I don't need anyone else to say yes, and I make that very clear and negotiate hard.
Yes.
Yes. I think that the ones where I've bought, renovated, revalued in the early days, and basically got all my deposit, and doing my 95% lend meant that I got all of my deposit and my renovation money and a bit more stuck into the offset account to pay the shortfall in interest for the next 2 years back out in cash, meant I could just go again straight away.
Yeah, brilliant.
And some of them that have grown over time that I get surprised by have been pretty good.
Yeah, awesome.
There's a lot of the ones in the same areas, and I've got a lot of property around the Newcastle Newcastle area, and a lot of those have performed very well over that period of time.
Yeah, the last 3 years would have done particularly well, I would have thought, mate.
Yeah, I go back to the bank and get a revaluation and get surprised. Or I was sitting in the hospital a few weeks ago. I just cut my hand, simply, nothing major, and I read the paper, the local paper there, and I look at the property prices and because of the growth that's happened, and get shocked and go, hang on, I've got one round the corner.
Perfect.
That's fantastic, but that's so much money.
Yeah, exactly, mate. Now, mind you, it's probably going to come back a little bit as a flow on from Sydney, so it might be a good time to war chest now in readiness to, if you're looking at that land tax issue, to start looking further afield potentially if you're adding more to the portfolio.
I'm a holder. I'll roll through the next cycle.
Yeah. Now, mate, let's jump into the future for a minute if we can. And I sort of would love you to share with us what is your dream lifestyle ultimately? What are you doing? Where are you doing it? Where are you living? And then sort of flowing on from that, how does it differ from where you're at now? And what are you going to invest in between now and then to bridge that gap?
So I think the dream lifestyle, I think if I think about the things that I do now in my life, and I've got 3 kids that are young, and the next point in my life is really, I think, what's going to be they don't care what I do for a job. I think they think I'm a pilot, sometimes, as they call it. And when I try to say I'm going to the office, my 2-year-old daughter goes, "No, Daddy, up."
I love it.
One day they'll work out that I don't have and probably another thing on that, the times that they have come to the office, it's a Saturday and I'm cooking bacon egg rolls to everybody in June, and they think I'm a cook, pilot. They don't care what I do is what I'm getting at. The only thing they care about when I pull up at home and walk through that door, and they run from whatever they're doing to give me hugs and kisses.
Yeah,
and I think it's awesome. The best piece of my day, firstly.
Yeah.
And into the future now, I mean, even though I love my job, into the future, I want to be able to, what they care about is time. The things that I do, my ideal life involves time with them at the times that matter more than it does in the house that I live. And saying that, I sort of live and spend my time between Sydney and Newcastle a lot of the time, as well as travelling around the country all over the place. And, as far as where I'm at in that, by the way, I rent vested till only the last couple of years. Back to the invest for a moment. And I'll build a house soon. And purely because I want to make a better one where I've now bought one. I'm not. I want a bit more time. When my kids get back old enough, I'll get back into doing some of the travel that I've done in the past, and I'll have some focus on making sure I organise my work-life balance to be around at the times that matter for them. I suppose. I've done quite well out of property in my business over that time, and in the past, so it buys me some ability to be flexible with portfolio of property and things like that create a lot of the things from an income perspective I want in life. And money's not my key driver. What does it look like into the future? Well, that'll be interesting. I've still got a job and I love it, so I just got to balance those things, Bushy.
It's a good call. So is there anything that you'll be investing in differently between now and at a point where you have got more time back on your hands to spend with your kids and family at the time that it counts? Is there anything that you'll be investing in differently between now and then, mate?
Look, I've got a fair. Property is. I'm heavily weighted in property. I also have a fair share portfolio. I don't have I haven't invested a lot in super. I've made my contributions of late. Super's a great vehicle in some ways, but I'm always a bit scared of the government tinkering with it by the time I'm allowed to touch it.
You and me both. Totally.
So I think it's a tax-effective way to get to retirement. But I feel like as you get older, but I feel like I've done pretty well by using the money otherwise. And I know, that scares that says to a lot of financial planners, Brad, don't say that, I think. But But that's not right for everybody either. I think I'm someone who's, done the things to create financial stability through my life now, and I want to play with it a little bit as well. I invested in the good things that make money before I spent too much money on the boats and the things. Otherwise, although I've always had boats, I've never been someone who was the big loan on the car came before the big loan on the house. Those things were later. Now, so I'm I'll still buy property if it's good enough. I'm always there as a buyer if the deal's enough of a screamer. I don't have a lot of time to do renovating and things at the moment. I looked at another development site the other day that's a small one with someone else, but I'm not highly excited about it. I'll keep playing with my brokers in the share market and rolling through.
Yeah, no, Brent. And I just picking up on something you mentioned there, because I've similar to you. For a long time, and at various times along my journey, I've been a rent vestor before a rent vestor was even a thing. I didn't even know how to call it that, but it just made sense to me at the time to live where I wanted at a fraction of what it would cost for a mortgage, and put in all of my energy and excess surplus funds into investments that were structured in a way that weren't costing me much, but were increasing significantly in value over time, and that just by rent vesting, horsepowering it. And for those of you who don't know what rent vesting means that are listening into this, rent vesting is simply renting a property to live in to access a lifestyle you want, but then investing your hard-earned equity savings and capacity into properties that are rented out to someone else and then increase in value over time. And the benefit of rent vesting is exactly that. You access lifestyle at a fraction of the cost of a mortgage in the same location, and use that capacity to build wealth elsewhere. So talk to me a bit about that. Is that something that you fell into, or was that a deliberate decision on your part? What was your thinking around all of that, mate?
Well, when I started doing that, no, I didn't. There wasn't a term called rent vesting. I think, I looked. I was starting to buy some properties. And the concept of buying the principal place of residence house, and I guess I don't know. I knew sort of how to work out the numbers on these things, and I was actually part living in a house that we had purchased, and then realised, crunching the numbers and the mortgage payments of this, and ended up renting a fantastic place that got a really bad return in an area that was right next to the beach and beautiful and brand new.
Perfect.
And someone was funding obviously that, and they would have been fairly negative cash flow properties. But I was able to. I did, with the amount of equity required to buy that, I could go and buy 4 and get more rent from the 4, nearly double the rent from the 4 houses and other properties than what that rent was costing me. I get depreciation, which I love, but that's not my main reason, of course. But hey, I get tax deductions along the way. I miss out on a principal place of residence capital gains tax exemption, of course, but I bought 4 and I take advantage of the growth, even though I've got a CGT issue over that period of time, and my cash flow's better, and I live in a great spot that I probably can't buy property and get into the market otherwise. So I did that, and then I did it again, and I kept doing it. And it wasn't. I'm a believer that you can rent, and I think someone says you can't put a picture on the wall, you ask the property manager and you fix it when you're finished. It's not that expensive.
Exactly.
And you don't kind of settle, and people would probably say to me now that was okay because you didn't have kids, but I was also married for 10 years rent vesting, and people say you can't do it with your wife because they want to settle in. Now, I didn't actually end up buying because of the fact that I had children and wanted to settle in your principal place of residence. It was actually around the fact that I couldn't find something to rent where I wanted to rent it.
There you go.
So I went and bought it, and my property portfolio meant I was able to.
Exactly. Brilliant.
So I think that why I did that was contrived on that very reason that I think is very relevant today, where we have the potential there's a lot of a talk around affordability, and then I think if you can't get the deposit together or you can't afford to buy where you want to live, then rent vesting is something you should absolutely have a look into. Look for properties in the areas that have got potential for growth and the drivers for growth that will grow, so you're in that market, and look to rent somewhere where you want to live if you can't afford to buy where you want to live.
Yeah, 100%. That's just brilliant advice, mate. And I just think the old Australian dream of you've got to own your own home first, it's purely a mindset thing. And you can make anything home if you put your mind to it. And if we can start to get people to separate the concept of accessing lifestyle from ownership of assets, then there's a much greater opportunity. And as you've well put it, the affordability issues that people are experiencing in Sydney and now in areas of Melbourne along the east coast, not so much here in South Australia, because it's still pretty cheap from that perspective in this location. But
and so it's not the same everywhere in the country, but it's still, it's something that, once again, like everything, needs to crunch some numbers, relate them to your situation, but it should always be a consideration, and don't worry about hanging pictures on the wall. It's sticky things to do it with these days.
I love it, mate. That's awesome. Brilliant, mate. So if you were giving advice to someone who was starting out on their investment journey, and whether that be business, career, property, shares, you name it, what sort of tips do you think you could give them on starting their journey in that respect?
There's a few through there that we've been talking about first, Bushy, but things like not being scared to jump in and have a go.
Yep.
Some of the things that we did through the early days, we used to, we used to have a little saying that we called WTW, which was win then worry.
You like it? That's good. WTW.
Things like bite off, little statements like bite off more than you can chew and chew like hell. Things that I call one of my boats "Bring It On," because I think bring it on, have a go, and when it comes to investing in property, then you've got to cover risks and not be. I say those type of things when you need to be flippant. Learn.
Yeah.
Read. Firstly, if you think you're going to invest in property and you haven't read every property investment book that you can buy in the shop, then you need to go and do that first. Once you've done that, make sure you do it quickly so you don't waste too much time.
Buy the audio book.
And then if that's the way you learn and get through the books, learn as much as you can about that, and then don't be afraid to jump in. Don't be afraid to pay mortgage insurance if the end result that you've researched enough to understand. Because if that's what stops you, you need to not have fear of getting it wrong sometimes. But if you do get it wrong, then you've got to, pivot into what that looks like afterwards, considering what you do, what your situation is, and that's different for everybody. Everybody has a different risk profile. I had a very different risk profile 20 years in 2002 to what I do today.
Of course.
In saying that, I went through a point where now I still, you never put everything on the next deal.
No.
You look at what you're prepared to lose on the next deal if it goes pear-shaped now for me. I think at the start, don't be scared to have a go at these things as long as you've learnt about what you're doing. If you're buying property, crunch the numbers. If you're going into business, make sure you understand as much about going into that business as you can. And you do that the same way by reading, by learning and learning the things you need to know to be successful, what it is. Give yourself the tools.
Yeah, brilliant. Now, talking about books, mate, are there any favourites that you'd be suggesting people grab and work their way through?
I think, Bushy, I've got your book on my desk as we discussed.
Thanks for the plug, mate.
I'd say that's great, but I haven't actually read it yet.
I'll come back to you on that one.
So you've asked me for some feedback, so now I have to read it. It's on my desk because I think, as I said to you, is the first thing I do on any property investment book is I pick it up and I read the depreciation schedules, the depreciation section.
Right.
I judge whether the writer did enough research on that to understand it, and if you didn't work that out, then I'll probably put the book away and not bother reading it because I worry about the other research. I think one thing I probably did through the journey is I didn't read one book, I didn't go to one seminar and decide that person's strategy was the best one, the only one, the right one.
Yep.
And I think sometimes the people in the industry think there's only one strategy. There's not. No. I read a number of. Yeah. I went to a number of because I was the depreciation speaker, and I picked up bits and pieces from all of them.
Great.
And I applied them in little bits and pieces to the things I did, and I went to more and I learned more. Yeah. And when the same people say the same things that are the things that make them successful, then I guess it's often more likely to be the case. And when you do your checks against those things and trial them in the things that you do, the quest to learn is what the important thing is, and I still do that every day. And especially in my business, I've got a fair idea on the numbers on property investment. I don't have a crystal ball, unfortunately, but in my business and my new businesses, I've got the challenges now to learn about areas that I don't know as much about. Depreciation, I'm pretty good. But, in other spaces, I've got the challenge to learn, the challenge to how to find out to be the best at those things. Yeah. But I've got taking the basic fundamentals of integral business and honesty to those things, and learning how to sell and market and things like that at the same time. And multiples is my answer.
Yes, no, that's good. That's a good answer. You mentioned earlier, mate, that your business is branching into some other areas and new business initiatives. Are you able to share with us what they are, or is it a bit premature?
Oh no, it's not premature. I'm able to. It's not the not the focus, but BMT is becoming our insurance. Well, not becoming. We are insurance brokers. I have an AFSL, so
right.
We will do house and contents and landlords insurance as a broker. We have underwriters.
Good to know.
And look, I guess one of the key pieces behind that is that we're a business that estimates the construction cost of people's property for the purpose of depreciation schedules.
Of course.
When you look at the insurance industry in the world, you've got to insure your property for the right amount to reconstruct it. The industry has no idea what that is. They ask you when you ring up, don't they?
They put your thumb in the mouth and then stick it in the wind to try and guess. Absolutely right. And that's it's a really good alignment, actually. That the landlord insurance piece I'm particularly interested in, because there's some pretty average landlord insurance policies out there, Brad. And there's a couple that specialise that are much better than the others. But I'm assuming that given your focus on the investment piece, that landlord policy is going to be pretty special. Is there anything that you can tell us about it yet, or is that again a bit early? So we've got to focus on the correct construction cost, and then a landlord policy associated with that has the correct cover. We did a lot of research, and I've got insurance specialists in relation to this that are 25-year veterans in the industry and involved in major insurers in putting these things together, and gave the brief of, we want the policy that covers the right things at reasonable prices. Yeah. What do the people want? What do the people need? Yeah. And make sure the price is competitive for what you're getting in eggs for eggs. Yeah. And the policies that we've got there are that, and they're priced competitively. So good. The insurance business is it's in the early stages of moving along. We'll work with we've got people that we've worked with, but we want to make sure that if they're interested in that at the same time, that we've got the ability to do that. So it's a work for the same clients. It's got a lot of synergies in what we do, and we've got a key point of difference in that we've got real construction costs, so we can insure these things, make sure they're insured for the right amount of money. Love it. Well, you need to come back to me on that, because we've got a big portfolio of stable investors that we've been looking after for a long time now, and one of the banes of, as I think my good wife and I owned and ran a property management business for quite some time before we sold it about a year and a half ago. And we saw firsthand what was good, bad and ugly about the various policies. A couple of the standouts at the time, the ones that we could really see the difference, and there was very little difference in premium that you paid a little bit more for, but most of them relied purely on the bond to cover any issues. And then by the time you got to a tribunal hearing or an ACAC or depending on what it is in each state, 3 months could easily pass by. So by the time the investor gets paid out the policy, they're well and truly in the hole. And the very good ones, and the couple of the very good ones have been bought out by major insurance policies, and that's significantly changed the flavour of the way they're now doing business. So I think you're coming into a gap in the market that potentially be very good for you, mate. So for myself and the listeners, I'm very all ears to have a listen to what that offering might be.
I think, Bushy, one thing, in the key fundamentals of how we've done this, that we're doing this business is that I've called it BMT insurance because I'm not scared of that in respect to the fact that you're going to get a BMT type experience. Right. When you have a claim, you'll deal with my BMT people that I nicely control to produce an experience where we work for the person that pays for the policy to make, the deny stamp doesn't come out from the underwriter without us getting notified first. And
brilliant. That's,
I think, a key. I'm not sending you. Obviously, the underwriter is the claims house,
of course,
but they do it. They looked at me pretty funny when I said, "Well, when a claim goes in, I want to know when it's submitted, and I want to know when you've called them, and I want to know whether it's being done properly because so we're actually taking the claim call, helping to submit the claim, and keeping them accountable to respond by a certain time, and don't deny unless you've got a good reason."
Yeah, brilliant, brilliant.
And simple things like that. Now, look, the other one, Bushy, that we've got is we purchased a business called homesales.com.au, which we purchased from carsales.com.au. So a slightly different space, but a real estate portal that's had a bit of a focus on investors. And then you can probably start to see the correlation. I believe in crunching your numbers before you buy properties.
Of course.
And we've built and embedded some better tools in there to crunch the numbers, including things like depreciation numbers, cash flow numbers against those things through an app we built called PropCalc. So if you don't have someone helping you with the numbers, you've got some ability to see what these numbers should be by entering some of your own information to take off and get some more advice on.
Right.
And we built it because we understand how to crunch the numbers. We got it backed by accountants at Deloitte to check the methodology and make sure it's right. And we actually push some depreciation numbers and things in there to help with one of those things, which is a cash flow when you're buying.
Brilliant.
To get people to look at the people that are buying properties.
Yeah, that's an awesome alignment, mate, and some pretty exciting stuff there. I mean, the things you mentioned there in terms of the people that we look after as both property investment advisors and investment savvy mortgage brokers, we tend to do. I often say we build it on paper first by crunching the numbers before you do absolutely anything, and we're very keen to make sure that complete due diligence is done on that, so on a very conservative basis, so that investors are going in with their eyes open before they open their wallets. But having access to those sort of tools through homesales.com.au and BMT Insurance, a great compliment, mate. So I'll be very keen for your team to get in touch with us so that we can look at that and then assist our clients take advantage of it, mate. So, look, mate, it's been awesome talking to you. Always is. I always feel like I could talk to you for hours, mate. And if I had the opportunity, I would. Would love to get you back at various stages, particularly given there's an ongoing media hype around the whole negative gearing debate and what's going to happen if Labor gets in, etc., etc. So it's going to continue to be topical, and I want to make sure our listeners are right up to speed, and there's no better man to talk to than you in that regard. So thanks again for getting on board with me, mate. Really will enjoy your honest and firm feedback on the Freedom Formula when you get a chance to read it at some stage, and keep on doing what you're doing, mate, and we'll look forward to talking to you soon. Just in closing, mate, how can people contact you if they need to in relation to depreciation insurance or the homesales.com exercise?
Look, the home sales, BMT tax depreciation website's bmtqs.com.au. Very easy to find us there. Google us or just at that website, BMT Insurance. Once again, BMT Insurance is the website, bmtinsurance.com.au.
Yep.
Once again, Googling, they're linked in between pretty much. You can find us from the main pretty easily. And homesales.com.au is obviously a separate brand, and it's simply that, homesales.com.au.
Yeah, brilliant, mate. Fantastic, mate. Thanks again. Keep on doing what you're doing, and we'll stay in touch, mate. We'll talk soon.
Great. Thanks, Bushy. Great to be here.
How good was that? I hope you enjoyed it. To get a summary of all the investment gold and to get a copy of the show notes, email me on hello@khgroup.com.au. That's HELLO@khgroup.com.au. Or check us out at www.khgroup.com.au/get invested. And join me next week for another episode of the Get Invested podcast. Thanks for listening, and as always, dream as if you'll live forever and live as if you'll die tomorrow.